20 years developing a technique, an artistic technique, which has a science basis to it actually, and she will explain it because I can never explain it. But it's a chemical foil mechanical heat process which is very scientific. In fact, she will tell you the history of it and then tell you, and she will demonstrate how she does it, and then she will give you, you can see all her work around here. Okay.
We're all done crying.
We're all done.
So my name is Kimberlee Rocca. I'm Jim's oldest daughter, and I studied at the University of Iowa. I studied art, and I got a degree in metalsmithing, and with a minor in fiber art and a minor in design. So as I went through my studies at the university, I took every art class that I could find. I thoroughly enjoyed geology and loved all of the rocks and the formations and all of the science behind that, and just loved the expression of just being able to go out and look at God's great earth and just the amazing things that are all around us. So I utilize that in my art, and it's very inspirational for me. And so after taking lots and lots of classes, I kind of ran out of things to discover or try. And to me, that's what university is about, is trying to find the things that really you have a synergy with so that you can spend your life pursuing those things. And I stumbled across a class called foil imaging. Now, at the time, it was a workshop. It was a 3-week workshop in the summer, and they were just starting to teach it. It was the first class that they ever offered. And it utilized the foil press, and this is only part of it because this is the part that I use. It's the only part that I brought, but I'll show you pictures of the more technical part of it. That's really the backbone to the foil imaging as they're teaching at the university. This is a hot plate. It's heated to 275 degrees right now. So that's the temperature that I personally work at. This is a prototype model of the Iowa foil printer, developed here at the University of Iowa by engineers and my art instructor, Virginia Myers, who is 84 and is still teaching this particular thing. This is her baby, and she spent a lot of time trying to develop this and show it to people so that it could be taught wherever anyone would like to teach it. So I'm kind of not in the university realm anymore. I do this on my own. And I laugh and say I'm kind of her rogue student because I don't follow her typical train of teaching. So what I'm going to show you today is a little different vein than what she's teaching at the university. A long time ago, after they had a few years of the classes, they put together a book of all of the students and their discoveries, because no one had ever used this process or done this process, so everything that we were doing was a discovery. So each student was allowed to submit their information and how they did what they did, and she purchased our original works to then print and include in this book. So this is the first ever book about foil imaging, and it was put together by our instructor, and it's just a wonderful conglomeration of all of the students and everything that they've discovered, and I am fortunate to be a part of this book, so it's very exciting. I'm going to show you a picture now of well, here, let me start here. This is foil, and it comes in rolls, and it comes in a lot of different types. The main types are a blind emboss, which is kind of like a tint film, which will change the color of another foil if you lay it over top slightly. So you can see it. So color is manipulated by layering in this process.
Can you pass that around? Can you pass some samples around?
You betcha. Thanks, Malcolm. And this foil is called a pearlescent foil, and it is somewhat translucent, but it's called more of an opaque, but it also will layer, and when it's pressed down, it'll transform the color underneath. This would be an example of a spot like that, and so would this. So I've taken several different layers and created that, that effect of vapor. This is a pigment foil, and it is more of a solid paint color. It has no reflective quality. They come in a shiny, glossy version, but they also come in a matte version. Let's see here if I've got some good examples. This white is a pigment foil, and it's a flat pigment foil, so it doesn't have any reflection to it. And this one's pink. Then there are, let's get a fun one. There are metallic foils. And this is where the palette really starts to expand. So in painting and printing and all kinds of other art forms that you see now, you don't get this kind of quality in the visual light reaction. So this is where Virginia saw that medium. She saw this and said, gosh, I want to use that. I want to use it to create art myself. I don't want to have to, originally it's used for printing like this, and it requires large equipment, which I'll show you, like this. Okay, so these are all very heavily engineered pieces of equipment. For everything that's printed, a die is cut, a metal die, and then this is run through a press, and the die stamps the image onto whatever substrate it is. In this case, it's a book. In some cases, it's cereal boxes and different types of packaging. You'll see it on your credit cards. You'll see it on your driver's license. All of that is foil, and this is the commercial version. Well, Virginia saw this, was fascinated, and said, I want to do this, but I don't want to use this equipment. How can I do this and not use this equipment? So she invented, with some other people, and a little paper here, the Iowa foil printer. Well, I can show you here. You guys can look at this book later. But basically, it's the hot plate that you'll see in front of me. And then this is essentially a hot rolling pin. So this part is a silicone-covered core, and it rolls and allows you to roll the foil onto the piece, whether it's paper or whatever it is you're working on. So it took a lot of engineering to invent the roller, and it's really the backbone of her technique of the Iowa foil printer. So there was several engineers, and Virginia got together and developed the Iowa foil printer. There were several prototypes that went through. As I said, I have number 7. Number 6. I have number 6, and since this was such an early model, my roller didn't work anymore after a while, and I didn't really want to buy a new one. I was kind of trying to see if I could do something without the roller, and I ended up working in a totally different vein, kind of out of necessity. So I was a poor art student. Didn't want to buy the equipment again. And at the time, they were really, they were still developing it. So I didn't want to purchase another prototype to have that one not really function. So I was kind of waiting for them to work the bugs out. Well, in the course of working the bugs out, I have come into a whole different way of applying foil. So here's a few more fun foil types, and this is expanding the palette even a little bit more. These are the fun holographic foils. So you get a bunch of light, reflection, reaction, and there's a couple, and like this one's a coppery one. And so now you can take this and you're just taking the whole color spectrum up. The disadvantage to the foil is that there's only so many colors. So unlike paint, where you have an unlimited number of ways to mix and combine and create all of these subtle variations in hues, Foil is very limited. These are the only blind embossed colors, or sorry, the pearlescent colors. That's it. If you want more, you're not going to find them. So you have to be creative in how you layer. These are the blind embossed ones, which were like the film, the almost clear film. That's all the colors they have. And then the pigment foils. This is it. There's just not much. And then they show you the sort of on a larger scale, but that's it. Those are all the colors. Now, occasionally they get rid of colors, and sometimes they bring new colors in, but for printing purposes, they don't need a lot of colors. These are, let's see. Now, there are several companies that make them. This is just one company. And then there are the metallics. So you can see there's all these subtle variations of gold because they all reflect differently, and blues and different colors. But still, a very limited palette when you compare it to paint. And then, these are the fun, wild ones. So this is where you get into that very ultra-modern, you know, almost a techno kind of feel. And the other interesting thing about the foil is that they all have different stamping temperatures. So if you want to apply a metallic foil, for example, it's very aggressive. And if I lay it down onto something, I can do a quick sample here. And this is prepared, and I'll tell you about this in a minute. But this particular foil is very aggressive. So this is my hot plate. This is my prepared surface, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And this is my foil. So right now they're all just kind of loose and floating on here. And I'm letting this heat up a little bit. And since it's very hot, I work with my really fancy tools, which are rags, because there aren't tools developed yet to do what I'm doing. So I will take and hold my piece, and I will use, this is just a felt blender for pastels, which I've developed into my very own personal fabulous tool, and I will apply pressure. Now, yeah, you guys are welcome to come up. Now, it's the combination of heat and pressure that allows for the transfer or application of the foil. Now, the disadvantage to working by hand is that you do not get the amount of control for the application that you would get using the original presses. The foil printer, the roller part that Virginia has invented, creates a version of the industrial press that allows you more control. For me, I've developed my own style where I like the lack of control, and I've learned to utilize it to do what I do. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I prepare. One of the big developments or the keys in applying foil to anything was getting a bonding agent that would allow you to control where the foil would stick. So if the foil stamps at, like a pigment foil stamps at a hotter temperature, it takes 285, 300 degrees with a quick press to stamp this particular foil. This particular foil stamps at maybe 215, 230, and you can get a good transfer. So if you jack the temperatures way up into 300 range, it will stick to everything. If you lower the temperature and apply a polymer base that's dry, which you can, this one's really exaggerated so you can see it. This is kind of a cloudy, but it's clear. It's a cloudy version that's applied to this. This is metal, this is paper. It allows the foil, allows you to control a little bit more where the foil is adhering. So I can lower the temperature, increase my pressure, and then I can control where it's going to stick. So I'll do a little pigment one here. The pigment ones are much harder to adhere. So with these, it takes a lot more pressure, a lot more patience, and they're going to be a whole different look.
Oh.
So this is now a matte color compared to a foil color. And then I'll show you what a pearlescent does. This one. This one will be good. So this is kind of a creamy pearlescent, the ones that I told you sort of change the color a little bit. And I'm going to do it on the pink and not on, we'll do it on right here. Now these are really aggressive and they do not take much temperature to make them adhere. So you'll get a slight tone change in the pink. You'll take the metallic away from the metallic, and if you just put it over just the plain silver, you just get that faint hint of the color that it is. A long time ago, I worked only on paper because it was what I knew to do. We applied a product that's basically a latex paint or polymer-based paint product that's clear to the paper surface, allowed it to dry, and then once it was dry, when I put it on this hot plate, it gets sticky. So it acts as a glue, but once it's not heated, it's no longer sticky, and then nothing, you're not going to go around and touch these and go, ooh, it's sticky. So the paper, although wonderful to work on, is a natural insulator to the transfer of the heat. And it makes it harder to do the same pigment transfer. There are also some natural limitations in size to paper. So you can do things on canvas that are very, very large, but when you get into paper, you have to protect it once you make it, and then you have limitations of glass, frames, things like that to keep this protected. So after a long time of working on paper, I tried to think of something that I could use where I could get really big and work as large as that piece over there. I started searching around to find, I just picked up some metal. Now this is aluminum, and this aluminum won't rust, so it makes it a longevity product. And it's fairly thin, so it's easy to manage on my press. It's kind of nice because I can roll it for shipping and makes it convenient that way. And the problem that I was having is that the product that I was using to prepare the paper was not adhering to the metal. So I had to do some research and find a product that would not only adhere to the metal, but when heated, wouldn't bubble off or separate from the metal. And I discovered this fabulous, very expensive product, which is from Sherwin-Williams. And what it is, it's a marine paint that's made for outdoor use to bond to metal, and it's not going to break down over time. And so after some trial and error, I'm very excited about my discovery, and it's allowed me to work very large and to not have to glass my work. So over here is work that has glass in front of it, and over here and that's all on paper, and over here is work that's all on metal, and it doesn't have any glass. And the exciting thing about that is the way that the foil reacts to the light has nothing between it. The glass can buffer some of that light reaction, and you pick up glare and things like that, and here you just get visual foil. And so it's very exciting for me, because not only can I work very large, but there's no barrier between the foil and the person viewing it. So it's kind of fun. It's very durable. You touch it, and you can almost even scratch at it. It's a very durable product. So, and it's got some UV blockers in it, but it's not overly, you wouldn't want to put it out in the sunlight for a really long time. There is a product that I'm researching that can be applied over the foil for blocking UV, so that in the future I may be able to do outdoor installations that are quite large. So that's kind of the direction that I'm heading with that. I love what I do. This is like so exciting for me, and I could spend all day and all night doing nothing but foil, but with my 4 kids and another job and my husband, and kind of I get limited in time, and I just love to do it. I'm trying to think of some other neat things. Are there any questions that you guys have while I'm kind of in the midst of this? I want to give you a chance to test it out and try it out. I've got a bunch of small pieces here.
Kimberlee, why don't you tell them what you're currently developing with your tools? Is that?
Oh,
yeah, I think that.
Well, that's kind of.
Oh, is that on the QT?
That's kind of on the lowdown.
Well,
right
she's
on down.
very inventive. My father was an inventor, so she's got that gene pool that she's in the process of inventing some products.
What I use for my little crude tools, I'm working with the people who made this equipment to try to develop some things that allow me to do this with heat applied from the top and not just the bottoms. Because right now, I'm just applying heat from the bottom and pressure from the top. It would be really nice to be able to apply the heat, if this were heated, to apply heat from the top. It would give me added control, and I could lower my temperature. I could do things that were more intricate and more drawing based, and even more painterly. So this particular vein is very painterly. With the foil roller, I think people get a little bit squelched because they can't control as much as they'd like to. This is like my best friend, because I can do little things and I can get big and I can start to do a much broader stroke. The other thing that I'm also working with the gentleman with is this plate is 24 by 24, and to work large like that is very difficult.
Yes.
Because you're only able to work on a small section at a time, and if you want a stroke that goes like this, you have to stroke, move, wait for the heat, stroke a little farther, move, wait for the heat, and so it cuts down on your artistic freedom. You want that expression to come through, and so it's challenging to get that kind of expression on that scale. On this scale, it's very simple. I can make lines and all that because this fits right on here.
Yeah.
So as I get larger, it becomes more complicated. So my next desire is to have a press that's like this long, and doesn't need to be any deeper, but a lot longer, so that I can work on a bigger area at one time.
I think a heated rink, so you
A
can
heated
put
rink.
the things on your feet.
Skate around.
Oh, how fun! At this time, can you share with them your passion to do big?
To do what?
Big.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I was talking about. Is so with the
But
so the metal has allowed me to go that large, but that is a product is at my availability is limited to that width. I'm working with a metal fabricator to get aluminum that's 5 feet, or I guess it's 4 feet by 10 feet, so about as long as this table and as high as me. But it presents a problem with the press, and it wouldn't be as thin as that for the rolling aspect. So this is very thin. I'm trying to make this noise with it. The pieces that I would get that would be that big would be a lot thicker, so they wouldn't have this flexibility to them, which makes the heat conduct differently. So then you have to sort of relearn the stamping temperatures of the foils so that you can know just how long to hold it on, and it's all just a very delicate balance. The more you work with it, the more you remember. And I used to have to look at the guide and say, okay, this one's needs this temperature and I can hold it this long, but eventually you get to know all that, and it just becomes a natural feel. So this is my palette box. It's my lovely. Everything here was done from this, and I work at different times. You'll notice that things are kind of grouped by categories, or times that I did things. So this whole series was done at one time. You'll see a whole blue period. That series in the back. I tend to work in groups, and it just is how I work. So if anyone would like to try this and to come up and look and touch and all that and look through the book and look through the guide, you guys are more
Man,
than welcome.
come on, you are artistic.
No, I'm thinking about the nature of art. That's great. That's great.
So the first you need to test because the foil is a different temperature.
Yes, they're
So
all
you
different.
need to test
Yep.
and then
And in-
write on which is workable, is right?
Yes, I did. And in fact, here, let me show you. And there's actually a couple different ways. So here's an example. I did a bunch of these
Yes,
where you take a foil,
yes.
and then these are the different pearlescent colors.
Uh-huh.
And then you would sort of do a grid and see, okay, do they stamp over each other?
Okay.
What temperature does it take to
this is
stamp one over the
science.
other?
Right.
Because once I put this
Yes.
foil
Yeah.
down, it's very hard to stamp on top of this one. I have to have a very high temperature.
Ah.
But if I put this foil down, lots of things will stamp over top of it. So it's all varies based on the color code, and then you'll see the different ways that it affects the color. You know, there's the green on the green,
Mhm.
but it didn't stamp unless I
Yes,
applied
yes, that's my
a
question.
clear coat.
Yep.
So, well, here's another thing that I don't do anymore. I used to, every time I would fill up the whole layer with color, I would apply another clear coat layer so that I could add more foil.
Ah.
I was working at a lower temperature. When I increased the temperature, I need to apply the clear coat in between layers, which I like because it takes a long time for the clear coat to dry. It really stunts my creativity. You know, it was kind of a joy to be able to go hotter and but still have control, because that was something that wasn't really taught. That level of control was very difficult to achieve, and in fact frustrated a lot of the students that took the class. This is done with a stick, you know, something like this to scratch on. You can get very delicate. This is a texture that was done with the clear coat prior to the application. And in fact, let's see, unlike this one, and especially that one, you'll see a lot of texture underneath. So I'll use, in fact, here's what texture looks like before it's applied. So I'll use the clear coat and let it glob and do really textural things, because the foil, you see how thin it is. It's 1/1000th of a millimeter,
Uh-huh.
and it comes off the carrier. So when you're done, you know, this carrier's still here. The foil itself